Hey guys, welcome back to CNC Life, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my birth story. I am about 1 month postpartum, or just like a few days short of that, and I think I'm finally ready to tell you guys how my birth went for Iris. I gotta say that this was definitely a completely different experience than with Jackson. I'll definitely say that I had a much better experience this time around. There was a couple things that have almost entirely ruined having babies for me though. I will say that there was a couple traumatizing things that happened, but overall my experience was so much better. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. I'm also super excited just to compare with Jackson's, because my C-section with Jackson for my first ever C-section was honestly traumatizing. It definitely made me never want to have babies again. Having that C-section was just really hard on me. Also, the whole entire labor process with Jackson was really tough. But this time around, this was an entirely different experience. It was a scheduled C-section, which with Jackson, I was in labor for, bless you. Well, with Jackson, I was in labor for over 36 hours before I finally went and had my C-section. And so this time around, it was much different to just go to the hospital for a scheduled C-section and be like, I'm here to have my baby, let's have my baby. So anyways, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Iris is right over here in the swing. Hopefully she's good for all of this. Make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button, and let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So right off the bat, I've had this scheduled C-section. I had it planned for months. Months ago, we picked the date of January 5th to go have Iris at the hospital. So right off the bat, obviously this entire experience is already so much different with it being scheduled. And obviously I could have gone into labor earlier, but I didn't. I had this scheduled for exactly 39 weeks pregnant. It was the date that I had to choose with my doctor, and it was pretty cool to just have like a scheduled date. Although it did make it like agonizing to wait for that date, but it happened. We're past that, okay? Anyways, so basically my C-section was scheduled for 9:30 in the morning, which means I had to get to the hospital at 7:30 in the morning, which we did. And overall, I feel like I was pretty stressed out and overwhelmed, but I was holding it together because I was gonna go have my baby. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, the last month of my pregnancy was extremely difficult on my body, and each day that went on, it just kept getting harder and harder. I remember telling Carlos and my parents, you know, that each day I was like, I can't believe that this day is worse than the day before. That's just how hard my pregnancy was at the end. I was in so much pain. I could barely walk around the house. I could barely get around. I had extremely bad pelvic pain and sciatic pain, and it was rough. All I wanted to do was have this baby, because I knew having the baby would mean that this pain would be instantly gone, and I was right. Anyways, so we get to the hospital at 7:30 a.m. and immediately when we get there, I get a room and I start getting like my gown on. And that's when I start panicking. That's when I start realizing that I am very much going to have a baby. And one of the things that I was most afraid of was, one, getting the spinal, because it sounded terrifying, and I know that I wasn't gonna be like numbed for that. And then obviously the actual C-section is also scary to think about. But overall, I was most fearful of the spinal. Rightfully so. I'll tell you guys why later. Anyways, so we get into our hospital. I get into like my little, it's almost like a triage room. It wasn't like the labor and delivery room. That's like where we go after, well, not labor and delivery. We go to the postpartum room after. This room that we were in kind of felt more like a triage room, where they just basically get you ready to take you to the operating room. So in this triage room, that's where we end up getting like my IV, which was the worst IV placement of my life. They literally put my IV, I think I still have the scar. They put my IV right here and then taped my hand up so that I couldn't even make a fist. The IV placement was extremely uncomfortable. Luckily, it ended up kind of fading away and not being a problem later on. Mostly because they weren't using it, so it just kind of hung on my hand for 2 days. It was not pleasant, but it was fine. I didn't care that much about it. And they ended up fixing it a little bit before I went in for my C-section. Once I get my IV in, I definitely start getting really panicky, and I start kind of like crying a little bit. I do get really, really nervous. I am not a very laid back person. I start thinking about worst case scenario, and immediately once we're in this room, I start telling every nurse, anesthesiologist, every doctor that I had a bad experience with Jackson. My priority this time around was to not have a bad experience. I tell them right away, I said, with Jackson, with my first son, I had a really bad experience with my C-section. Not only did I end up getting knocked out because I was feeling pain, I also just did not get to, I didn't get to remember any of it. I was extremely exhausted. I didn't get to have any of the special things. I don't remember meeting him. And I told everybody this story. Every time someone came in and I thought they would be in the operating room with me, I told them that I'm looking for a better experience. I also mentioned that I really wanted delayed cord clamping for Iris. I wanted to have a clear jerk to be able to see her. I wanted to have skin to skin. All the things that I didn't get with Jackson, basically. And I also just made it very clear that I was very nervous about not being able to experience this, you know. With Jackson, I don't remember meeting him. I don't remember that experience. I just live it through the videos and the pictures that Carlos took. But I know for a fact that I don't remember actually having him, that everything was a blur. So this time around, I made it very clear, and everybody was so nice. Every doctor, nurse, and OB was like, we got you, girl. We're gonna make sure that you have a better experience. They said that as soon as they pull her out of me, they will drop the blue drape and I'd be able to see her, which I did. They were gonna give me skin to skin as long as she was good and healthy. Like, they weren't just gonna hand her off to Carlos right away. They were gonna come put her on my chest, which was really cool, especially as like a C-section. It's not very common that you can have the baby placed directly on you, especially when they're literally right there closing you up while they're doing that. So that was really cool. Everybody seemed really great and on top of it, and overall I felt better when I talked to everybody about it. Now I'm gonna tell you guys about the worst part. The part that I remember calling my mom and I remember saying, I don't think I'm gonna have babies again. I think I'm done. There's no way I can experience that again. That was as bad as I thought it was going to be, basically. And that was getting the spinal. So the spinal is different than the epidural. With Jackson, I got the epidural, and honestly, also, I was the experience. The epidural took nothing. It was not that painful. It was not that uncomfortable. I also was in a lot of pain, so I was like, get that in me right now, let's do it. This time around, I went to get the spinal. Once we got taken to the operating room and Carlos was separated from me, the first thing we're working on is getting me ready for the spinal. This took 20-30 minutes to get the spinal. So imagine being 39 weeks pregnant. You're hunched over the operating table with no support, obviously, for like your body, and there is a resident doing my spinal with the other lady there. I don't know who I don't forget what these people are called. But anyways, so the actual professional lady is there and the resident is doing my spinal, and he takes well over 20 minutes to do my spinal. The entire time he's doing it, I am crying. And in my mind, all I'm thinking is, I wish I could just say, never mind, I don't want to do this anymore. But that's not an option when you're having a baby. You have to have your baby, especially for a scheduled C-section. So I remember just sitting there crying, and the nurse was holding my hand, and I was sobbing because I just didn't want to be there anymore. Every time he did the spinal, I would feel popping in my spine. He probably tried several times, I believe. I would feel popping on my left, and they would be like, where did you feel that? And I would say, my left side. Oh, that's not right then, because obviously it needs to be right in the middle of my spine. Then they would do it again. It would be on my right side. It took multiple pops of my spine. Every time I think about it, it makes me want to, like, it gave me really bad feelings. It gave me very bad feelings every time I think about it. Obviously, I don't remember exactly how painful it was now, but I just know that how I felt in that moment was, I was very, very upset. And I hated it so much. And I'm one of those people that once I start crying, people want to like try to talk to you and try to get you like out of your head. But when people do that, I just start crying more. I'm better off just not being spoken to. But the nurses kept asking me questions and trying to like get my mind off of it, and it was not happening. I was just tearful. I was crying. It was very tough. If I look past the spinal, after that, after this man eventually got my spinal, I had a much better experience after that. Because then I was numb and I was ready to lay down. I remember one thing I was struggling with once I was laying down the operating table was actually staying awake. I think because they give you, I don't know what they give you, but I remember just being very, very tired. And I remember just like wanting to take a nap on the operating table, which is crazy because I'm 10 minutes from meeting my baby probably, and I'm literally thinking about taking a nap. Bless you. And I just kept telling myself, Cassie, no, you need to stay awake, you need to stay awake, you do not want to fall asleep for this. But I don't know what they were giving me or what was happening, but I wanted to take a nap so bad. Eventually Carlos comes in, and I am still very tearful. I am still very much like crying every once in a while. So Carlos sees me. I feel like as soon as Carlos was in the room and I put myself together a little bit, within a minute or two, we were having the baby, and I feel like after that, everything just went so smooth. As smooth as it could be, I think. So immediately they bring her out of my belly and they pull down the clear screen and we immediately get to see her. She starts crying right away, which was amazing because sometimes that's like the scariest part. And we got to see her for quite some time through the clear screen because we were also doing a delayed cord clamping, which they only delay for about a minute, but that was good enough for me. Just the fact that they would accommodate it all was very nice, actually, just because in C-sections I feel like sometimes there's not like a ton of say of what you want, not like when you're having like a labor and you can like kind of have a lot more say, I feel like. So it was really cool that we got to do a 1 minute cord clamping. That whole minute we got to see her, she was crying, we got to see how little she was. I remember like one of the first things that me saying was, she's so little, she's tiny. I could tell right away that she was much smaller than Jackson. Right after that, I feel like they took her away, obviously, which is fine. They took her away and Carlos went over there with her. Bless you. And one of my favorite things about this is when they took Jackson away, they took him away out of my eyesight with Carlos, which was fine because Carlos was with him. But I remember not being able to see Jackson at all. They were out of my eyesight. They were across the room behind my drape where I could not see anybody. And I remember sitting there for like 10 minutes not knowing what was going on. Not a lot of people were talking to me. And this time around, everyone was communicating with me. And when they took Iris away and Carlos walked away, they walked away 5 feet to my left. And I was able to watch them the entire time while they were over there, you know, weighing her, you know, getting her cleaned up. Carlos was cutting the umbilical cord. I got to witness all of that from the operating table, which I thought was just really special. I just liked that I got to be a part of everything. I also feel like my anesthesiologist, she spoke to me the entire time. Everybody talked to me. Nobody made me feel like I was out of the loop, which was probably the biggest difference here, was just that I was so aware and there was so much more communication. Carlos was right next to me. The baby was right there. Everything just went so much smoother. Right after they did all that, they actually came right back over. They didn't even wrap her up and they put her directly on my chest. And I feel like we got to do skin to skin for like 10 minutes probably before they probably took her away and wrapped her up. But being able to do skin to skin and like I got to actually hold her and like love on her for a few minutes, just me and her, was really special. Again, I didn't get that with Jackson. When I first met him, he was already all wrapped up and I think Carlos had already held him and things like that. Just things that I felt very jealous of because I was having a C-section and I just felt like I got stripped away something special. This time around, I really felt like I got to have all the special things that I wanted. It makes you forget about everything going on below you, which is that they're literally stitching up your entire stomach. Shortly after that, I was off the operating table and I know that they brought me over and I got to hold Iris and get wheeled back to our room where we got to spend our postpartum and like our golden hour basically. Although I feel like we were there much longer than like an hour, I'd say. I basically couldn't leave postpartum room until I could move my legs, which took a very long time because my legs were like super knocked out. But actually after that we had to spend postpartum where I got to do more skin to skin. Carlos got to do skin to skin and we really just got to bond and love on her for like well over an hour or two before we got taken to our actual postpartum room. But overall though guys, I would really just say that compared to Jackson, this was an amazing experience. A planned C-section is definitely my go-to from now on. I would definitely never not do a planned C-section now. It was so nice to just have something that I just went and got done. Even though when I think about how I felt before, I know that it was really tough on me and getting that spinal was the worst experience. Top 5 worst experience of my life was getting that spinal. But you know, you look at your baby and everything's worth it, obviously, but it was really hard on me to get that. Like I said though, but then I was able to have such a great experience of having her. Carlos and I were just super present the entire time and it was really beautiful, I feel like. I also feel like a really great aspect of having my planned C-section was with Jackson, I was in labor for 36 hours, maybe even more than that, honestly. So you can imagine how exhausted not only I was, but also Carlos was. And then we went and had the C-section at 4:30 p.m. So what I'm trying to say is at 4:30 p.m. I had my C-section with Jackson. And then I had that bad experience where I was clearly very knocked out. I was super out of it. If you look at any of my pictures with Jackson, I look really drugged up. And then a few hours later, it's bedtime, it's nighttime. And we have a baby newborn who we barely get to enjoy because we're so exhausted from labor. I had a traumatizing C-section. I was knocked out. And then next thing you know, it's night out. It's dark out and we haven't slept in 2 days. So I do feel like that, when I think about that experience with Jackson, it's like it's no wonder that that was such a hard experience for us and that it wasn't very enjoyable in the moment. With her, because we got at the hospital at 7:30 in the morning, she was born at 11:30, which I know sounds late, and the C-section was supposed to happen at 9:30 and we did get delayed a few hours, but the fact that we then had 11:30 and then we had all day to like recuperate, spend time with her. My parents got to visit the same day. We just had so much more time and we weren't so exhausted because we actually got to sleep the night before. We weren't in labor for so long. All of that really does make the experience so much better, and I think that's part of why it went a lot smoother as well. You wanna say hi, baby girl? Say hi. Hello. I also wanted to I remembered also, so when you have your C-section, you cannot eat for up to like a certain amount of hours. So I hadn't eaten since the night before. And I remember the whole time postpartum, and also you couldn't really have a lot of water also. You had like little tiny sips of water, that was it. I remember the whole time postpartum just being like, I'm so thirsty, I'm so hungry. I was so shaky from not eating. I do get very low blood sugar when I don't eat. And I also was extremely thirsty, and they didn't want to give me anything for so long, obviously just because I had abdominal surgery. It was completely understandable. But in my mind, I was like, well, I'm literally starving and I'm so freaking thirsty that I remember that just bothering me for so long. I ended up not being able to eat until like 4 p.m. I think. Which means I went like almost 24 hours without eating because I hadn't eaten since practically dinner time the night before. I also was so thirsty because it just had been so long since I had had water or anything like that. I was actually just watching my birth story with Jackson, and I can just see the pain in my eyes when I talk about my birth story. Just like the labor, how bad the labor went. And then like the C-section, I was so happy to get the C-section, and then the C-section went bad as well. And so I just really feel for Cassie. I feel so bad for Cassie 3 years ago because I just feel like that was so hard on her. And when I look back on this experience, I know that the spinal was really rough and the whole entire like before was rough, but it's nothing compared to how not fun my labor and delivery was with Jackson, and just how much better this birth with Iris was, and just how much more special it was. So overall, that was my birth story, you guys. I feel like that's all I have to really say. I feel like overall I just had such a better experience, and if you guys go watch Jackson's, I think you guys will really see that as well, that I had so much hope with Jackson, and then I had such a bad experience that I'm just so thankful that this experience with Iris was so much more enjoyable. And look at this, I got a cute little baby out of it. Look at that, I got a cute baby. And out came a 6-pound, 4-ounce little itty bitty baby. Now look at her. She's my little chunk-a-munk now. She's a little chunky girl now. And she was 19 inches long. But when we went to her first pediatrician appointment, she was 18 inches long. So we actually think the hospital measured her wrong and that she was 18 inches long. But, you know, we just say she was 19 inches as the hospital said. But I'm pretty sure she was more like 18 inches. Anyways, guys, I actually think I'm going to go ahead and end this video. I hope you guys liked it as much as I did. I really enjoyed being able to talk about it with you guys. So make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. And I will see you guys in our next video. If you guys have any questions, leave them down below. Leave them down below and I'll try to answer them. Bye, guys. Say bye. You ready? Ready? Say bye, guys. Shoom.